asked her, how do you want to be coached at the next level? How do you want me to coach that? And her front of the classroom A+ answer was, Coach, you can coach me however you want. So guess what, Eric? That's what I did.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, it's halfway through her sophomore season. I get a text. Hey, Coach, can we meet in your office? I'm like, yeah, no problem. She just walks in. She goes, we gotta re-examine the you coaching me however you want thing.
Hello and welcome to Center for Victory's podcast of Your Best Day Yet. Here at Center for Victory, we're here to help unlock, reinforce, and enrich relationships through personal and professional development. I'm Eric Guy, Chief Victory Officer at the Center for Victory. With us today, a different guest. We haven't heard this topic before, so I'm ready to dig in. Jared Zeidman. So just a little bit about him before he speaks here. Just came out with a book, Nail the Recruiting Process, bringing with him 15 years of extensive experience in collegiate athletics. Prior to that venture, Jared made the courageous decision to step away from a full-time coaching and focus on his recovery from severe complications of COVID-19. Currently serving as a consultant for college coaches aiming to build successful programs and high school athletes seeking recruitment. That's something I think you should pay attention to. Jared's recognized for his dynamic energy, developmental lens on coaching, and a passion for sports that extends beyond the field of play. Boy, I could have used you years ago, Jared, but welcome to the show, my friend.
Eric, thank you so much for having me. And I will reiterate, I super love your team's mission and vision in terms of who you serve and it being relationship forward. So I think we're about to become friends here. I'm really pumped about it.
Yes, sir. So one of the things, Jared, that I didn't mention yet, that's kind of in your bio and kind of out there about you that I think is very important before we dive in here, is, your experience gets those athletes recruited, but once they're there, helping them flourish, which is huge. I mean, I didn't have, and nobody in my family had that experience before I went, as an athlete. And I could have used some help, but I was telling you before we started recording that, boy, where were you at years and years ago? When a lot of the families that I deal with, either in business or just, coaching, therapy, whatever, I've run into a lot of these athletes, and I'm glad to see that there's help out there. But once they get there, how do they flourish?
I appreciate that. And I will say right off the rip, philosophically, I think that my aim is to teach you to fish and not give you the fish. And it's funny because when I was in the developmental stages of both the book and my consulting project, I shared my work with a bunch of former athletes like you, and I got that feedback pretty consistently, which was, I think you're filling a void here because it's not about necessarily getting recruited. It's about prep for what college actually looks like and being able to flourish once you're there. So I'm going to actually answer this by focusing on 4 core components. The word that these components make up is gear. But coaches are looking to develop these 4 things in their athletes aside from the sport itself. So if you show up with these 4 qualities, you have a kind of a leg up on your peers that are arriving to college with you. The first one is G for growth oriented. A growth oriented mindset essentially means you're able to take a failure and use it as a learning experience rather than taking it personally. So people that are growth oriented are extremely comfortable going as hard as they can in a drill and getting the drill wrong, which is totally okay because we have zero expectation that you walk in and get it right. But we do have an expectation that you go hard and are open to the feedback. People with growth oriented mindsets flourish. The next one is E for engage. And engagement works 2 ways. Sustained eye contact, I know especially in the advent of the cell phone age, is harder for young people, but I actually interviewed a coach yesterday who was telling me how mission critical eye contact is to her on the recruiting trail and with her young players, and that a ticket to earning her trust to actually put you on the court is your ability to engage with good posture, good eye contact, so that she has an understanding that you're actually taking in her instruction. So it's both engaging with coaches, and then on the other end, Engagement is being locked in all game. Are you that kid that's casual in warmups, or you treat the drill that's like a lot lighter than you treat the scrimmage or the game? Then you're not engaged. And the most engaged players tend to rise to the top earlier. The next one is A for aware. And to me, awareness is the only part of this that's exactly the same in high school and in college. You should know yourself. You should get to know yourself better. I would strongly encourage a personality type inventory so you can kind of learn what type of leadership and coaching resonates best for you. But you also need to know what your strengths are, what you need to get better at, and essentially what you want out of this whole experience. And finally is the last word, ready. Now, for the adults in the room, ready can also be resilient. But for the young people, I keep it as ready because, Eric, you can attest from your experience, college life moves at a lightning fast pace that you really don't understand until you're there. And it takes a little bit of time to get adjusted. So the more you focus on the G, the E, the A in gear, the more ready you are for whatever comes your way at the collegiate level. So I would encourage athletes to focus on their gear, and whatever individual adjustments you need to make in your sport, do it with your gear in mind.
That's good stuff. And I like how you made it simple. And that's in the book too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So just to make sure, just to go back a little bit, because I threw it out there at the beginning of your bio.
Yes.
The book is actually Nail the Recruiting Process. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah.
Everything is Nail the Recruiting Process. I'm taking a cue from my Gen Z people in business that came before me and paved the way. If you're looking for me, you'll find it with something called Nail the Recruiting Process.
All right, good to know. I just want to make sure because I think this is a very relevant topic, even though we just got started. So, Jared, what are the biggest misunderstandings high school athletes and their parents have about college sports?
Okay, in the interest of not making this a 7-hour podcast, I'm going to give you my 3 most important ones, okay? First one, Instagram and maybe some shrewd business people that work with high school athletes would like you to believe that a single sport focus is really important to your development. Not only do college coaches not care about that, but they actually would prefer you play multiple sports because I'm going to use my sport as an example. Let's say you're great at basketball. Well, that means you're a big fish. When you show up on a college campus, you're not the big fish anymore. You're on a team where everybody was the big fish. Mm-hmm. So it is extremely useful if you say ran track or played volleyball or played soccer or played men's lacrosse or baseball where you weren't the best on your team. And you had to actually kind of learn those resilience and, again, some of those gear components. The other great thing about that is you learn how to take coaching from different people because when you go to play in college, the staff is going to be bigger than your high school staff, and you have to be able to hear it from different voices. So that's the first one. I surveyed 50 college coaches, half scholarship, half non-scholarship, and literally all but one of them said single sport focus did not matter to them at all.
Wow.
So it was pretty crazy. The second one, I think that, again, social media, I can't control it. And I as mad as I want to get, I know that people older than me made the apps. So I can't just assign blame to one populace. But there's a lot of prestige now that's affiliated with being on the best high school team, being on the best AAU team, focusing on your stats. And the biggest take home to me of this entire thing we talk about, coaches aren't looking at those things the way you think they are. When I had the opportunity to survey college coaches, the prestige of your high school was not a huge factor in your recruiting process. The prestige of your AAU program was not a huge factor in your recruiting process. And most coaches told me that unless they were recruiting for a very specific position, which only ends up being about 10% of recruits overall, they don't actually care about your stats. So what they're actually looking for is your ability to compete and maintain a certain competitive and attitude standard against a team comprised of athletes that also wants to play at that level. And really nothing more, nothing less. For some people, that happens at high school. For some people, that happens on the AAU court. But this doesn't need to turn into a thing where you're logging every single win you get. You're on a journey in this recruiting process, and you have to try to basically find good competition and elevate your standard against that competition. And that is when you're going to be noticed, not with the name on the front of your jersey, because regionally it changes. This country's huge. And then the last one, I do not think young people understand enough how much their attitude matters in the recruiting process. And to give you, in my opinion, the craziest piece of data from the book, I asked the 50 coaches, let's just assume you have a 10 out of 10 attitude kid that's a future captain. How bad can they be at the sport for you to be willing to tolerate them? And I gave them a scale of 1 to 10. A 1, I literally said to coaches, this kid can't tie their shoes. And a 10 was they're an All-American at your level. The average response was a 5 out of 10. And to give you a crazier insight into that, D1 and D3 coaches were equally as likely to answer with the average of a 5 out of 10. So that attitude response did not differ at level. There are certain thresholds that coaches need you to clear. There is absolutely a talent floor that differs at each level, but your attitude breaks the tie. And I wish more young people understood that.
Wow. That was good stuff. That's very good. I'm just interested in like your mindset and what your thoughts are around like everything that's going on with college recruiting nowadays. What's the future of that look like? I mean, I know that's another loaded question, so sorry about that, but
no, it's funny. This is where my answers get less confident. So I love talking about this stuff because we're entering the unknown. I think that there's some hypotheticals and there's some actual math. So let's start with the hypotheticals because that matters. College sports, especially at the highest level, should have been reformed like 25 years ago. And, our country has a very, very unique way to extend the lives of things that make a lot of money for the people earning the most money. And because of that, the change is now happening all at once and in a really what I would describe as out of control way. So, right now the talk is NLI, where athletes can be compensated. But I honestly think we're within 2 months of federal courts being like, oh, it's not just NLI anymore. If athletes can prove that you're making legit money off of them and profiting, you're going to have to pay them. And not only is that going to raise the expectations because, unfortunately, and this as an adult, if you enter a higher stakes business world, then there are higher expectations on you. And I'm not sure that every 18-year-old is actually ready for that. That's piece one. And then piece two is the transfer portal. And to give your listeners just kind of a primer, they don't need to actually understand the portal itself. The bigger thing they need to understand is the rules. And until COVID, if you tried to transfer at the scholarship level, you had to sit out for a year. There was kind of a penalty for transferring. Once COVID happened, the NCAA did something called a blanket waiver, and they just gave everyone the ability to transfer without penalty. And then so many people transferred that it sort of gave the NCAA the impression of like, oh, there's some like false marketing and bad experiences out there. We're going to need to keep this. So to give you, now we move into the real data off that hypothetical with the transfer portal. For the last 5 years, 20% of men's and women's Division I basketball was in the transfer portal. That's literally 20% of every college basketball team. That's one starter on every team in the transfer portal. Where this trickles down, and my biggest concern for the future is like, imagine the pendulum swinging back, except because of everything that came before it, the laws of physics don't apply and it's moving at like the speed of an asteroid. So now we're looking at each year, college coaches are actually pulling from the transfer portal before they're recruiting high school athletes because of these new competitive standards and because of those experiential edges. So the actual math is in each of the last 5 years, 10 to 12% fewer high school athletes have been recruited to play college basketball. So it has never been harder to be recruited to play a college sport. And that is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about what I'm doing, which is essentially getting you to think more holistically about your journey, pointing you at the very specific skills that you need to get better at basketball. And if I don't have the answer, like I can't tell you the specific skills that you need to get better at field hockey, but I could point you to somebody that could. And I just want to continue building that network so that we can kind of reestablish the playing field and give high school athletes a shot. Because I'm sure you'll attest to this, being a college athlete is a transformative experience that readies you for a lot of things ahead after college. And I want people to have that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, I've always, we actually have an NCAA wrestler, Division I wrestler on staff. He's on a lot of podcasts with me. But just, it's everything that's after that. And that's why I said earlier when, hey, where were you, all those years ago? Because I run into this all the time and have people that I still coach. I just can't speak to, all these little things are great nuggets, right? And we're, this is only going to be a 20, 30-minute podcast, but all these little nuggets for people to know and to prepare for, and, what's a coach looking for, all that stuff, even to just like those things. I mean, I know you mentioned earlier, I mean, one of the things that's been helpful for us that we're seeing more of a move to, and I don't know if you want to speak to this, because this is kind of probably how we'll become even better friends. You mentioned assessments and things like that. That's really our side, but I see colleges and have colleges that are calling in now and saying, hey, can you help us out? Like,
yes,
even in the recruiting phase, like, what are we getting? But more so to make it more competitive, at least that's what they're saying. And I believe this is, once you get them in, just like a business, it's like, how do we keep them? Because there's so many personality differences. I always talk about mine. I mean, I had my high school coaches, people could talk bad about them all you want, but they brought me in and really told me who I was my sophomore year when I was already excelling. And I remember that day. And then I remember going to college and then getting like it's smacked right in the face. I was like, oh my goodness. And granted, I had a bad attitude. Okay. When I went
I wasn't ready when I was that age either. So I'm with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had a very severe accident, literally could have took my life, that the summer before that, and had lost, 30 plus pounds. And so I went into football camp, pretty damaged and way lower weight. So that didn't help either. So that didn't help with the attitude, but that personality difference, once coaches, and I actually just had a coach email yesterday from a university here locally. And, they were asking, hey, look, what about this? What about this? Can you help me with my players? Can you help me understand it? Can you help me understand my coaching staff? What's missing? Which I think we need to go to. So I'm excited about it. So
I would actually love to touch on some of that. If you're open to it, I would love to touch on some of it. So you just described something that's really important to me, because when I talk, I like to talk sometimes to players and parents at the same time, because there's sometimes that just from a lack of experience that comes with being 16, it's nothing personal. The parents might get this a little bit more than the kids. And the way I kind of pitch this to the parents is, in this modern day of collegiate athletics, your recruiting process has a couple of elements where you can treat it like a job interview and kind of interview the company back. Mm-hmm. And what it used to be, and we can all harken back to this time where we were all tryhards and we tried to do this. Like, when you were in class in high school, you wanted to just give the right answer to the question. Didn't have to be something you agreed with. It just had to be something that gave you a grade increase, right? So these kids are kind of conditioned to go into the recruiting process the same way. And these coaches go, well, do you have any questions for us? And for lack of a better way of putting it, they either ask nothing or dumb things that don't give them substantial information about what the experience will look like, because they're just trying to impress the coach. And let me give you a perfect example of that. One of my favorite people, who hilariously is now a college coach, so she's okay with me saying this.
Okay.
I asked her point blank, because I saw the way she played, And she played with this incredible energy, but sometimes it was like too much energy. And I asked her, how do you want to be coached at the next level? How do you want me to coach that? And her front of the classroom A+ answer was, Coach, you can coach me however you want. So guess what, Eric? That's what I did.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, it's halfway through her sophomore season. I get a text. Hey, Coach, can we meet in your office? I'm like, yeah, no problem. She just walks in. She goes, we gotta re-examine the you coaching me however you want thing. I'm learning that I can't actually respond to that. And what I try to sort of explain to people is, just like you and your work, if someone gave you 5 minutes to explain everything that your work did, you're gonna miss a detail, right? What you do every day is normal to you, but it's not normal yet to a candidate. And that's the same exact thing with the recruiting process. So my advice to these kids, and there's several questions in the book, and if you're not sold on the book yet, I'll give you some information later where you can follow me on social media, and my questions are actually on my social media pages. Some really good prompts that you can ask college coaches on your calls with them, on your visits with them, and you can actually hear how they respond. Now, to your point about you working with college coaches, my advice to the college coaches has been and will continue to be, do not answer aspirationally. Do not answer about what future you wants to do, because you don't always hit your aspirations. I need you to tell these recruits what you're like now and how last season was for you, so that these recruits can ask more honest answers and get feedback that comes off a little bit less as this like perfect, I nail it every time sales pitch. And when both of those sides kind of work together to find the correct information, that's where professional aged Eric and Jared can more relate to, oh, I actually really like this coach, but the school wasn't the right fit for me. Or, oh, I like the school, but I don't know if I'm going to be the best with that coaching staff, but I'll be happy to keep a relationship because they might be good for other people. That's when you really start to find the right fit for yourself. And I think what happens a lot of times, Eric, and I apologize for pontificating, but this is really important to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
People at the high school side see something go wrong with a college athlete and they overgeneralize that all college coaches are bad. And then college coaches have a bad experience with one kid who was lesser informed in the process. And the college coaches go, well, all these people are bad and getting, the wrong information. And I'm like my position of kind of being the middle person saying, hey, if both of you just leaned in and had more nuanced conversations, this would go 10 times better for both sides.
Yeah, I find I don't know how far you want to take this, but I find like
as far as you want to go, man, you're the driver.
With a lot of coaches, that they're really good on the operational side and the execution, and just like a lot of businesses, especially like I think a lot with the head coaches. But and again, general statement, I've had coaches that are great people, but a lot of them are good on the operational execution side, and then they just don't get the people side. It's a lot like businesses.
Well, and the biggest difference, and again, this is something I'm talking about right now with athletes and their parents. If you go to buy a car, you never actually deal with the manufacturers of the car or the people that assess the car. You only deal with the sales team. In most lines of work, that's all the sales team does. That's an entire skill set by itself, is relationships and people. Then all of a sudden, you look at education, and education is literally the only quote unquote industry we have in our country where the salespeople actually run the company. They do the assessment, they do the operations. So where I am encouraging parents to try to break through that is sometimes a coach's delivery in the recruiting process is a little messy, but I know on the back end, like that coach is incredible. And there are hundreds of kids that had amazing experience and, donate as alums and love going back to visit campus. And that's when I'll tell those recruits and parents, don't write off that coach. But again, this is the importance of asking questions. So to address this exact thing you're talking about, Eric, what I encourage players and parents to do is ask important questions to the coach and take notes on how the coach answers. Then reach out to a current member of the team. This is going to take some courage, but you're going to have to learn how to communicate one way or another. Right. And just say, hey, I just took a visit. I'm really interested in this school and becoming a future teammate of yours. I'd like to share some details of this conversation I had with the coach. Can you tell me if this lines up with what your experience has been like? And that to me is the 360-degree way where you learn how to control for those people. Because I literally posted on Instagram yesterday, Eric, I have met some of my favorite people in this profession where their least favorite part of the process is recruiting and the sale. And then I've met some people that are exceptional at recruiting and the sale that aren't actually good at manufacturing the product. So we have to do a better job teaching young people to control for that.
Yeah, that's great advice. That was a good conversation there. So before I forget, and you mentioned it again, I just want to, the book again, folks, Nail the Recruiting Process. Jared, before, like I said, before we forget, how do folks get in touch with you?
So the book is Nail the Recruiting Process. The website is nailtherecruitingprocess.com. My email, phone number, and just basic info is all on that website. If you're in for quick hits on social media, I am also at Nail the Recruiting Process on Instagram. That's sort of Instagram I would describe as my like flagship right now because I get to do a little bit of everything. I'm still going by my old coaching tag on my other social media mediums. So on Twitter and TikTok, you can find me at Jared the Coach.
Where do you do most of your posting and things?
100% Instagram. So like if you were like, I have social media fatigue, but this guy sounds interesting, follow me on Instagram at Nail the Recruiting Process.
Okay, let's see if it works. Let's see if a geezer can do it. There it is. All right. Okay. Look, I just did it, folks. So
look for an extremely bald guy tossing a basketball in the air.
Right. So and I wanted to say this because, you know, I'm not the biggest social media person. We have a great team that does it for me, but I wanted to do that right now just so any parent listening go, oh, I can't find that. All right. Easy, guys. I just did it. Maybe we can have other conversations on that, but as well. But what really, I guess I didn't even ask you, what compelled you to kind of do all this? Like,
okay. So this is I appreciate you sharing a story about your accident and kind of where you were in the time following your accident, because I'm a little bit more comfortable now kind of sharing. I was at the literal pinnacle of my career. I was hired to be the first assistant to rebuild the Division I program, to work alongside literally one of my favorite people in the world. And a mutual friend also jumped in, and we were going to do this together. And the rebuild was working. And then I got COVID for the first time while hosting a recruiting visit, was completely asymptomatic. And then about 6 weeks later, I'm dumb, right? So I'm just out like running and playing pickup basketball. And I just came home and I told my wife, I was like, I just think something's not right. And it turned out that I had a multi-system inflammatory response to COVID. So I had a major inflammatory episode in my brain, my heart, my liver, my kidneys, and my GI system. And basically, it is crazy as this sounds, I didn't know it was happening until it was basically too late, and it completely crashed my immune system. And I have been working with an incredible team of doctors who have been amazing. But one of the things they shared with me was like, we are working on a full recovery for you. We don't know how long it's going to take, but we're confident you can get there. However, our version of a full recovery is probably different than what you're visualizing in your head. And, you know, you just worked like on the spectrum of the kind of jobs you can have. You just worked a very long hour, travel intensive, demanding job. And we really don't know what that's going to look like for you in the future. On the subject of having bad attitudes when you were younger, I took that information with complete denial and tried to coach through it and made myself literally like 1,000 times worse. So right now, I'm waiting to be cleared to return to full-time capacity. And if you believe in karma, a couple of high school and AAU coaches who I met through this process of recruiting their kids asked me to help some of their kids navigate the process. And I I talked to one specific guy who I will shout out because he's the man. His name is Dan Bushman. He's an incredible AAU coach in New England for the Mass Huskies organization. And I really trusted him. So I went with 2 of his kids and I just said, just so you know, I've never done this before. And like, we're going to pilot it my way. But I mean, I don't know if it works. And these 2 kids put their unconditional trust in me. One of them got a Division I scholarship to Her Perfect Fit, and the other one is playing for the number 2 ranked Division III team in the country beginning next season. So once that happened, I was like, okay, they asked a lot of questions that I really I don't want to just be person in a sport coat pointing at you because I know the answer. Let me go do some research based on the questions they asked, because I'll just venture a guess that other people have these questions. And frankly, that's how this was born. And Eric, I will tell you, as honest as I can be, I do not know what I would be doing with myself without this project. And this has, it has reactivated the coach in me and the listener in me and the energetic, kind of positive vibe encourager in me. And I do not know where I'd be without this project. So this literally launched in January and has picked up steam very rapidly. And the amount of gratitude-based emotions that I have for that are off the charts. And I'm sure with your personal professional experience, you can relate to that. Like sometimes there's this crazy fork in the road and you have no idea what's going to happen. And sometimes if you just kind of double down on the things you're most passionate about, the journey tends to take care of itself. And that is exactly where I am right now.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, lots of good stuff there. Lots of little great nuggets. And I hope people are listening to that. I hope people get more involved. Follow you. Parents, I don't want to hear it. I just did. I just connected with him on Instagram. So there's no reason to not follow him. The book again, is Nail the Recruiting Process. The last question, Jared, that we ask every guest.
Yep.
No right or wrong answer to this. And if you've watched the show, you know it's coming. Since it's called Your Best Day Yet, we always ask our guests the last question of how do you define your best day yet?
I love this question so much. My best day yet, I think I get to have it over and over again. And it's a day when I feel like I learned something really important, and I just grew and I leaned in. I'll share a quick story because this is my favorite best day yet, because coaches are control freaks, right? So we're playing a game against a top 25 team. And at this point, I'm basically acting in the capacity of a head coach at the Division III level. There are 2 minutes left in the game. We're down 5 points. And I am getting ready to sub out our best defensive forward to put in our best offensive forward to cut into the deficit. And mind you, I'm a control freak, but I value relationships. I call for the sub, and this forward, a senior named Ellie Vaughn, grabs my arm and goes, "Don't do it. Give me a chance." And I looked at the person I was going to sub in, who at that time was a first year. And I looked back at Ellie. I was like, "You sure?" She's like, "I got you." And for the first time in my life, I let go of that control. In that moment, I was like, "All right, let's do it." Ellie hits 2 free throws the very next possession of the game. Her teammate hits a 3. We end up taking a 2-point lead. The team that we're playing, Vassar, with 8 seconds left, executes an amazing play to tie the game. They elect not to call a timeout to get organized. We don't have a timeout left. I used it to potentially sub Ellie, which I didn't do. And this kid hits a buzzer-beating 3-point shot to win the game. And the very first person literally picks her up off the ground, and I have a picture of it to this day. It's one of my favorite pictures ever, is the kid that I was going to sub in for her.
Wow.
And if that doesn't define your best day yet, I don't know what will. I put my trust in others. I grew. They had the best experience ever. that moment will last a lifetime, a signature win for a signature leader on our team. And I'm just so thrilled that I got to be a part of it. And the coolest thing about coaching is you get to have the best day yet over and over again. It's all about stacking moments like that.
Yes. All right. I always love the answers from that because it's such a vague question, and I love all the answers I get. So that's another great answer. So thank you, Jared. Again, folks, last time I'll say it, but check it out. Nail the recruiting process. Jared, thanks for being on. That's all for today, folks. Hope you've got some nuggets. I sure did. And, I think a lot of parents, a lot of college coaches, a lot of high school kids, college kids even could benefit from listening to this. So until next time, Jared, love to have you back, chat some more. I've got a ton more questions for you. So
anytime. Thank you so much for having me. Anytime.
All right. So if you want more information, folks, check us out, centerforvictory.com. And remember, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, make this your best day yet. We'll see you soon.